Hi and welcome back with another tutorial. In this tutorial we will be looking at masking and how to extract meshes on with the help of masking and other tools. So let's open this demo soldier here. So if we have a character and we want to make multiple costumes of it, and like for example if we want to make a shirt or some pants or some other clothing part or some of any of the other things, we can just create a mask and extract it. For example, let me add some subdivisions on it. So if I press Ctrl on my keyboard, you can see that my brush changes here, which it switches to a mask and brush. So if I hit Ctrl and drag a mask like this, let's make the size bigger and mask the rest of the area. So I am making a shirt right now, as you can see that I am making a mask. So right now this character has multiple polygons. I can just select this polygroup, control click to mask it, control shift click to view the other subtool as well, and you can see that I have my mask. And now I just tweak it out to make it look like a shirt, and let's tweak it here. And if I control click and drag here, and you can see that I am able to drag a rectangle, and if I press alt I will be able to chip away from my mask, and I have unmasked it right now. So if I click on this extract button here, or go to my subtool menu, and we have this extract button here. So if I click on this extract here, and you can see that Zbrush has extracted a mesh, and if I rotate it, and our mesh is gone. So our mesh will always be gone. We have to accept the extraction and then it will work. So if I click on extract, right now the thickness is a bit too much for a shirt, so I will be just reducing this thickness to 0.005 and click on extract, and click on accept. And you can see that we have a shirt right now, and there are some of jagged edges here, and you can also see that we have multiple polygroups on the shirt. So if I click on the inner shell, we can just mask it out, and we can move and increase the thickness from on some part of it, which is super useful, because polygroup with the help of polygroup we can just quickly mask one area from the other. And right now it's the mesh is too dense. So in some cases, if you are extracting on a million polygon character, and then the mesh will be way too dense, so it is very important that you should Zremesh it. So if we go to down into our geometry tab and go down to Zremesher, I can just Zremesh it from here. So if you're using the same UI as me, you can just click it here. So right now you can see I'm just Zremeshing it, and my polygroups will be gone. You can see that I don't have enough polygroups, which is a bad thing for me, because I want my polygroups back. So I can just hit Ctrl Z and select this keep groups button here. We also have this button here, keep groups, and I can just Zremesh it up, and it will store the polygroups. You can see that we have this polygroups here as well. The polygroups are not gone. So Zremeshing is very useful. I can also just reduce the number of polygons, and let's see. So this is the polygon. This right now the polygon is okay, and you can see that it's messing up on some places. So let's just increase the thickness here, and click on this inflate. Inflate is under the deformation tab here. So if I click inflate and press 1, let's increase 2, 3, yeah. So this thickness is enough, and right now the Zremesher was messing up with my polygroup, so I can just polish by groups here to smooth out my polygroups. So I can just select this edge, or I can either Zremesh it and store my polygroups, but because there are some jagged edges like this, you can see that this is really bad for me, and I want it cleaned up. So I can just isolate it up, go to my modify topology tab, and go to the delete hidden, which will delete all the underlying polygons. and right now I cannot see the back edges of it, so I can just go to my display properties and click on the double side to show the back faces as well. So if I Zremesh it right now, and you can see there are some jagged edges here as well, so I can just go to polish by feature one more time, and you can see that it is nice and smooth. So I can just Zremesh it again, and you can see that we have really nice clean topology. So but I want my thickness back with polygroups on it, so I can just go to my edge loops here. We will be covering all these tabs in detail, but right now because I want to cover the masking and the mesh extraction, so and I want you to know that how we use the masking to create different shapes, and how we use them to paint colors on it. So if I want my thickness back, I can just click on these panel loops. I have panel loops here as well in my custom UI. So if you are not using the same UI, you can just go to your geometry tab, edge loops tab, and click it from here. So there is some thickness tab. So right now you can see that it's smoothing it out as well, because the polish is turned on. Let's turn off the polish and add some thickness on it. So you can see that we have some thickness, but I want some more. So 0.05. That's a bit too much, so let's do 0.02. Yeah, that's okay. So I have my thickness back, and you can see that we are adding some bevels on it, which I don't want in this case. So we can just reduce bevel, and you can see that it's totally flat right now. There are more edges here, which is 5. I don't want 5 edges here, I want 3. So I will just decrease the number of loops here, and so there is one more thing, which is the elevation. Right now, you can see that it's popping out, but if I want it to be inward, I can do that. You can also add thickness to your model in the Z modeler tab, which is also very handy. So I can just I have my shirt here, you can see that, and if I press Ctrl D to add subdivision, you can see that now it's smooth. And now I can just turn off my symmetry and add some wrinkles or clothes folds on it, and you can so that's how usually I make my clothes and the other parts. So mesh extraction is really handy. But in this video we will be looking at masking and how we can use masking with mesh extraction. So let me just sculpt some clothes folds on the shirt, and then we will be looking at how we can use it to create different parts of the clothing. So when you're sculpting the clothes folds, it is very important that you are looking at the tension points of the fabric, and how the clothes will bend according to the tension point. So mainly the tension points are located underneath your armpits, where the tension points are, because that's where most of the geometry bends. And we also have this tension point near the shoulders, where the clothes is pinching. As you can see that I am adding some clothes folds here as well. So it does take some time to know how to sculpt clothes folds and how to work on some other part. And we can also add creasing using the Damien standard brush. So if I go to my highest subdivision level and subdivide it once again, and I can just add some crease like this on my shirt, and I can just use my standard brush to inflate it or to add some volume to the crease. You can see like this. So this is how I sculpt clothes. So let's look at mesh extraction masking in a different way, because usually we use mask all the time for the posing and other things, but in this video we will be looking at the masking tab here. So the masking tab is very important. For example, we have some button here like clear mask, inverse mask, and blur mask, sharpen mask, grow, and shrink mask. So this is if I go to some of my lower subdivisions and create a mask. You can see that we have this mask. We can clear it by clicking on this button and control click and dragging in the background, which is the same thing. We can inverse it by clicking on this button here or tapping in the background by pressing control and tap in the background to inverse it. We can also blur it. For example, if our mask is really sharp, let's sharpen it, and let's go to our max subdivision and sharpen it. You can see our mask is really sharp, and if we don't want, we want it to be blurred, we can just click on this blur here and it will blur it out. And there is this feature, mask by feature. So this is really handy tool, a mask by feature. Let me just delete the underlying mesh, the back side of the mesh. I want it single sided like this. Like right now it has thickness, so I want this underneath polygons to be deleted. So I can just click on this delete hidden, and right now it won't delete because it will say it has multiple subdivision, but I can go to my lowest subdivision and click on this delete hidden button, and it will delete all the lowest subdivision button, all the hidden faces on the lowest subdivision, and it will retain the higher subdivisions. So most of the time, if some tool says that you cannot do something because there are subdivision levels, you can just go to the lowest subdivision level and apply the tool, and it will work in most cases. But it's in some cases it won't work because it is most of the tool work on Dynamesh and the decimated meshes, or any type of the mesh that doesn't have subdivision levels. So mask by feature does something like this. For example, let's smooth it here, and yeah. So for example, I want this crease to be added, and I want some thickness on it. So I can just click on this mask by border, and you won't see it. You will see that there is mask on this border edges, and if I control click to invert the mask here, and if I shrink mask, or control click to blur mask, control R to sharpen, control click to blur, and let's go to the lowest subdivision, control click to blur, and let's go to the upper subdivisions, and I will be repeating this process until I get something that I want, which is like this. I want some creasing on the edges. So you can see that by using mask by feature, I have easily masked this portion, and I can just click on this inflate button, which is in the deformation tab here, and you can see that we have some really nice creasing going on the edges, and we can just click on inflate again. We can just sharpen the mask and click on inflate again, give it a value of 1 or 2, and you can see that we have some really nice edging going on the borders. We can also just add some paint on it. We can just like this. So you can see that if I was manually masking it this up, it would be a hell lot of difficult for me, which is really important. And right now I was masking on the basis of border. So these are the border edges, and it will mask only the border edges based on this tab here. So if I have multiple polygroups on it, for example, so if I select these faces and let's deselect these faces, I'm using the select lasso brush. I just changed it from here. So we will be looking at most of these brushes later on in some other videos, but right now I'm just selecting the lasso brush. It's like the same way, like this, and you can select some part of the mesh, isolate one part of the mesh from other. So if I press Control W on my keyboard, we have some polygroups here, and if I Control Shift click on some edge, this is only exclusive to mask lasso. For example, you can see that if my select rect won't highlight the edges, but if I go to my select lasso, you can see that my edges is highlighted. So if you click, if you're selecting select lasso brush and click on the edge, it will just only select isolate this edge from the other part. So I can just press on Control W to mask this portion. And so now that I have separate polygroups on this, and just deselect this border, and I can just click on this group and mask by feature, and you can see that it has masked those polygroups that I have. And let's do one more thing. Let's mask on the highest subdivision level, so that I can easily select those groups and the edging on this group, and I can invert the mask and do an inflate with the -2 value, and you can see that I can easily create some creases on my shirt. I can also do some poly paint here as well, color and fill objects. So this is why I'm saying that masking is super important, super useful. I can do the same thing on the creases. For example, if I have some crease on some edges, let's go to the lowest subdivision and add some creases on the. So let's see that we do have a crease brush. Let me look at it where it is. Okay, crease. Here we have crease curve brush, so let's see what it does. Okay, let's add a crease manually. Just go to our crease submenu and add a crease with the 45 angle, and it should add some creases on the mesh where the angle is 45. For example, if I look very close to some of these edges, you can see a dotted line here. Yeah. So if I undo it, you can see the line is gone, and if I click crease on it, you can see that the line is here. And if I click mask by creases, and you will see that it will also be masking on those creases as well. So if I mask by creases, you can see that these edges have been masked as well. So let's go to the highest subdivision level and click on mask by crease, and you can see that we have this mask added on top of it here. So we can do these three combined here as well, and like this, and you can just select all the portions, sharpen the mask, and do whatever you want on your shirt or some other part of the geometry that you have. So let's look at the mask brushes, some of the mask brushes here as well. We will be looking at mask cavity, mask AO, and some other feature. So if I press Control on my keyboard, you can see that I have my brushes changed, and if I click on this, you can see that we have all these brushes here that we can use. So if I click on mask square, here you can see that it will add a perfect square and the mask on top of it. In case of mask pen, we can create a rectangle like this, but we cannot create it on the model. We can only create it just here, and if you press space on it, and we can just move it wherever we want and mask that portion. So the mask square inserts a perfect square, and for some of the hard surface brushes, it is very important, and we can just use it up. So right now you can see that we have some a kind of edging going on because we don't have enough subdivision level. So if I add one more subdivision level and I insert a mask, you can see it's much more cleaner, and we can just blur it out, sharpen it, blur, sharpen, blur, sharpen, and we have some nice freeze going on here, and we can just fill some color on top of it like this. So we also have this mask rectangle brush. We can just do something like this, and so there is one more thing. For example, in masking, if we are using masking brush, it will mask on both the front and the back side of the model. So you should be very careful while working on this masking brush. You should deselect the masking portion from the back if you don't want mask on the back. So if I invert my mask and control click on it, and we can fill some color on it, we can also do some inflation -2, and we can also add some textural details on top of it as well. So masking is super important and super useful, especially when you're working with the hard surface brushes. We also have this mask circle option here, and we can use it to mask a circular portion of the mesh like this, and we can just blur it out, sharpen it, and make it smooth. And inverting masks, let's do an inflate of 3 value, and let's do an inflate balloon of 0.5. Inflate balloon is also located in your deformation tab. It takes a bit some time to process, and you can see that I am easily able to mask those portions. So I can also pick color by pressing C key, and it will pick any of the color. You can see my color changes here, and you can see that I can pick all those colors, and which is also important. So, and we also have this if I press Control again, we also have this mask pen, and you know what mask pen does. The other masking brush is the mask lasso, which I use most of the time, which is super handy, super useful. For example, if I want some fire effect on my shirt or something like that, I can just mask something like this and then cut some portion of the mask. I can also paint some fire and some other colors on it, like this, the same way I have painted on some other projects. So you can see that I am painting on a very low intensity. I'm using the pressure sensitivity of my pen, and I am painting some kind of fire designs or something like this. So which is very handy when you're painting on top of your model. So you can see that masking is really important. You can just create whatever you want, and it will protect the other part of the meshes. Because I am adding a lot of polypaint and other information, I will be covering these tools like this because the other are special masking options that work on like AO and other portions, so we'll be covering those as well. That's why I'm adding a lot of polypaint and a lot of curvature on some places. So we also have mask curve pen, which I don't use most of the time, and I don't know how this works. I've never used it, so you can just check the documentation, and you can also add comments on it if you know how it works. We also have we can click on this mask curve as well. So mask curve is like this. For example, whatever is on the black side of the line, it will be masked like this. It takes a lot of time because it will create a super nice mask on the front and the back end. So let's reduce the subdivision because it's taking a lot of time. So if I draw a line again and I press Alt on it, and you can see that my curves bends, and if I press Alt again, it will bend again. And mask curve is super smooth. That's why it takes a lot of time. So there is one more thing. So right now you can see that it's bending in a very circular manner, but if you press Alt twice, and you can see that it is now linear again. So mask curve is also very important and also very special purpose brush, because most of the time you can just use the mask lasso brush to mask some part of the mesh, and in some other cases you can just go to your mask curve brush if you want your mask to be super smooth. And yeah, so I can just reduce my RGB intensity and add some color on it as well here. So You can see that I have added some different shade on top of it. And yeah, so most of the masking brushes here have been covered, and all of these brushes are here in this tab as well. So if I press M on my keyboard, you can see that all the brushes that I have used before are here as well. We have this mask circle, mask curve pen, and all the other masking brush. So you can also find those brushes in this tab, or you can just press Control and you can find all those brushes here as well. So there's this tab here that we have to look at mask by fibers. I haven't used it before. Maybe it's for the fiber mesh and some other stuff. I haven't looked into it. So we have masked by ambient occlusion. So this mask is if we go to the render tab, and we have this BPR AO, and if we enable our render properties, and right now if we just render it out, it will create some flat shadows on all the meshes. So let's look at it. Let's enable this our character, and let's make it white color, and let's just render it. You can see that right now the shadows are harsh, and AO is basically some shadows in the crevices where the light where it's difficult for the light to enter. So if I enable ambient occlusion in my render tab and render it once again, it will take a bit more time to render the AO, because AO takes AO is very GPU intensive. So you can see that there are some small shadows that we can see in the crevices, which is the AO. And if I do a mask by AO on this shirt, on this body, let's do it on the body, because there are some crevices here, and which will be masked if we mask it by AO. So if we go to the masking tab and click on mask by AO, and it hasn't generated some meshes, so it hasn't generated anything. Let's invert the mask and move. Yeah, so you can see that in the crevices it did mask some of the portion by masking by AO. So if I invert it, clear the mask and click on the mask by AO, you can see that the mask is added here. So if I mask by AO, you can see that the mask is added here on near the fingers where it is difficult for the light to enter. So let's look at mask by cavity. So cavities are really small details like the skin pores and some other small crevices. So let's add some small details on it. Let's solo it out. So I'll be covering this surface tab in the future as well, but right now just I will be adding some super crisp details, some noisy details, and I will be masking on the basis of that. So let's increase the noise scale a bit. Okay, so you can see that I have added some detail. Let's apply it to the mesh, and yeah. So I've added some noisy detail here, and I want to add a different color variation in the this crevices, this small crevices. So you can mask those on the basis of cavity. So if I click mask by cavity, you can see that my mask has been added on those portions. So if I click mask by cavity and my mask is added, I can just go to my paint brush and I can paint some different colors like this, some blue, orange, and some other colors. And yeah, so you can see that on the basis of cavities I was painting this texture because I was using mask by cavities. So this masking tab is really important when you are texturing, when you are working on hard surface stuff, when you're extracting meshes and creating some other geometries. I use this masking tab all the time. So we also have this mask by smoothness, so it will mask on the basis of smoothness. Right now I don't think it will mask any portion on the basis. It did mask some portion. So let's see what we have here. let's go to more. So yeah, so it let's see, masked some portion on the basis of smoothness right now, because everything is so noisy, and it does mask on the basis of smoothness. So if your mesh is smooth, then it will mask all of the portion, and if it's noisy, it won't mask it. So you can just play with the range and see how it works. So right now I just masked by smoothness, and let's see, that's not masking it. Let's increase the range and mask it again. So maybe I bumped up the range a bit too much. So yeah, you can clearly see the mask here right now. So it is masking on the basis of smoothness, on the basis, and the smoothness is controlled here on the range slider. You can also play with the fall off and check how it works for you. So there is also the peaks and valleys, which is the same as the cavity map, but it works in a bit different way. You can see that the cavity map, if we do mask by cavity, this is a bit more noisy, and it's selecting all the cavities apart from this smooth area because there are no cavities. But the peaks and valleys is a bit different from mask by cavity. It masked a bigger portion of the geometry on the basis of the peaks and where the major peaks lies. For example, like this line where the major peaks and valleys are, you can see that it's clearly masking this portion, and I cannot add polypaint on those valleys right here. So this is also very useful while working on it. You can use it with the combination of mask by cavity. So there is one more thing, which is mask by color. For example, this is really useful when I'm working on characters, working on their clothes and the texture. So I masked one portion. So usually you create polygroups for the characters, for example, but in most of the cases when you're working with subdivision levels, your polygroups won't work. Let me show you with an example. So if I add a mask here, let's add a mask here, and I press Ctrl W, you can see that I have added a polygroup here. But if I go to my lower subdivision and come back again, you can see that my polygroup is lost, which is, I mean, really difficult for me. I mean, I wanted to select mask this portion again on the basis of polygroup, but I just lost that portion, and which is really annoying because I'm just doing a Control Z, and now my polygroup is here, and now my mask is here as well. What I usually do, I just add some color on top of it. Let's add a really purple color, and Control invert mask and fill object. Let's increase the RGB intensity and fill object again. So you can see that I have this mask here. I have this color here, and I want this to be converted to mask. I can just go to my mask by polypaint, and I can just click and drag this, and you can see that I have masked those portion here, and you can see that I'm able to sculpt on the other side. So this is really handy if there is some portion of the character that I'm using that I'm painting mask again and again. I will just add some color on it, and I will use my mask by polypaint again and again on top of it. And there is one more thing. For example, I want to mask two colors at the same time. What I can do is click on this one and add it as well. So here you can see that it's also masking this portion as well, which is on the basis of tolerance it masks. So if I reduce the tolerance, you can see that it is removing a portion of the mask, and I can increase the tolerance, and you can see that I'm masking on the basis of tolerance. It is the same as magic wand tool in Photoshop, which also works on the basis of tolerance level or the color tolerance. So you can also select this green one and add it to the mask as well. So here you can see that I have very easily created a mask, and I can just sculpt on the other surfaces, and which is also very easy for me because I have masked this portion. So masking is very easy. Masking is super useful. You should develop a habit of using mask all the time, because you will be using it. It will help you a lot when you're working on characters, because if you wanted an edge like this, it would have been impossible. It would have taken a lot of time to manually sculpt it out, but you can see that I can just paint on some colors and mask it again and again, and sculpt it however I want. So mask by polypaint. There is also mask by intensity, which works on the basis of intensity, which is our color value. For example, if we have a very intense color, so you can see that right now it's let's undo our polypaint. So I haven't used mask by intensity a lot, because it works in the values, and I have right now, you can see multiple values. So if there is a total black color painted on top of it here, let's enable the polypaint again on our character. This brush button here enables the polypaint on all of our subtools. So let's go to our paintbrush and add some black paint and undo our polypaint on our whole subtool. And if I click on mask by intensity, you can see that the more black a color is, the more heavier the mask will be painted on it. So right now this mask here is a bit light. You can see that if I paint on it here, and I can paint less value here, and I can paint more value, because the mask is lighter here and mask is heavier here, and I cannot paint here right now. You can see that. So mask by intensity paints on the mask on the basis of intensity. Mask by hue, mask on the basis of hue. For example, if we have red color, it will leave it out of the mask. For example, here it just left the red color out, and it just masks gradually on the basis of hue. And the mask by saturation is also same. Wherever the saturation is more, it won't mask it. Where the saturation is less, and it will mask this. We also have mask by alpha. We will be using mask by alpha when we will be looking at the alphas tab. And yeah, that was all from me on the masking tab. See you in the next video.